So, the QC or Quality Control Department. So let's have a look. We're going to focus on good quality planning. It's the basis of good essays. Without a plan, it's just stream of consciousness. We get ideas and there's no flow. There's no flow. This is what makes coherence, cohesion. Does it make sense? Is it easy to follow? How easy does your reader find it to work through? And also at the planning stage, we select, we sift and select and decide which points, which ideas are going to be the most productive for us. Maybe they're not the most important, but if you can't think of an example for the important part, perhaps you go with something else. It's your essay. And then we're going to move on and look at the final editing section, the best use for the last few minutes. Okay, so let's move on. So I must have read thousands of essays. I tried to put a figure on this, and I have no idea how many I've read. As an examiner, as a teacher, it's many thousands. I've read many thousands of essays, some of which I know were planned, some of which I watched the students plan, some not. And after thousands and thousands, and it's potentially more than 10,000, you get a feel for them. And it's really easy to tell which have had a few minutes thought given to them before the writing began. I'm fairly certain that given the clock ticking down on the exam day, many of you go, oh, and start writing. And that's not going to be good use of this precious time. These 40 minutes, break them up into 5 minutes planning, then writing for 30, and 5 minutes editing. The head and the tail of the essay, these are the parts that make or break it. Without the plan, you don't know what to write. Without editing, all the rough bits and little mistakes are left in there. I write emails and then have a cup of tea and a biscuit, look back at the email, and then I correct it, because we all make mistakes. So to finish at 40 minutes and put the final full stop in, it can't be right. There must be something you can do to edit it. So plan to only write for 30 minutes. This means for a lot of you, fewer words. I'm not interested in the fact that you can write 400 words in 40 minutes. That's not what the examiner's looking for. They've given you a guideline, a minimum of 250. You could score band 9 with 255. They've got to be good words though. And the quality of the words and the quality of what you write drops noticeably the more you write. You just lay yourself open to be making more errors. Less is more. Fewer words, more carefully selected, carefully edited, and certainly planned. So why should we plan? Well, it's because we need to satisfy criteria. We've got band 7 criteria. I'm not going to show 6, I'm not going to show 8. Band 8 if we can get it, but this is what we need to get to 7. Obviously, if you don't have all of them, you might be getting 6.5. If you get more than this, you might be scoring 7.5. But this is what we need to get minimum. So band 7 criteria for the first section, task achievement. Well, task achievement asks that you address all parts of the task. So if your essay asks you to give examples where appropriate, give some examples. In task 2, there are various types of essay. If it's a problem and solution, make sure that you give a solution. Don't just describe the problem. So fully addressing all parts of the task. Most important. You should present a clear position throughout the response. So if you tell us that you agree with something, all your support materials should be in agreement. Don't suddenly go for a contrary position. And now the most important part for task achievement, they ask that you present, extend, and support main ideas. But hey, we're only band 7. It can go to 9. 9 is perfect, but if we've got 7, you can overgeneralize. You may lack a bit of focus, but you must have something in the way of extending and supporting your main ideas. So band 7 is achievable for many, many, many of you easily. But you still have a tendency to write too much. It's not asking for everything you know about a subject. That's not what is being tested. We're asking you to select and make a clear statement about what you think. Not the main right answer. There is no such thing. There's no correct answer. We're not testing you on how much you know, only on how clearly you can put forward something in English and support it with reasons and examples. That's all we ask. So let's have a look at the next criteria. The next criterion, coherence and cohesion. Well, we've looked at this in previous webinars. What is coherence? Well, does it make sense? And things which make an essay not make sense include verb-noun disagreement. For example, many people is. People is plural, so it has to be many people are. That's a very simple example, but you need to make sure that running all through your sentences and clauses, that's the sort of thing that you've checked for. The editing time is where you'll be able to pick that up. That's coherence. Now, cohesion is whether it sticks together, whether it's leading one to the other. You quite often see me doing this. Those of you who know my one-to-one sessions, and that means does the text hang together? Is it a text? A text is a collection of sentences and paragraphs which have a glue holding them together. They're all on the same general topic. Your general topic of the essay runs in a logical way. It makes it easy for the reader to read. And to do this, you need to use signpost words, or some textbooks call them cohesive devices. That's just a complicated way of saying words that let the reader know what's coming next. And it's as simple as, on the contrary. The reader immediately knows that you've stopped your positive or negative and you've gone to the opposite. So as soon as we get on the contrary, oh, reader's mind has changed. Or the cohesive devices to add things. In addition, additionally, furthermore, another point which should be considered is this sort of thing, which makes it easier to read. Okay, so let's have a look in detail at what an examiner will give you band 7 for with coherence and cohesion. So you need to logically organize information and ideas. You should show that there's clear progression throughout. So without a plan, that's impossible. You need a plan to link things together and to say, well, first of all this, however, you must bear this in mind. Another point to consider is, simple as that. You should use a range of, and here's this word, cohesive devices. So cohesive devices, as I said, mean signpost words. Let the reader know what's coming next. So use a range of cohesive devices. It's not sufficient to keep using the same one. You're losing opportunity to score in another area. You can use different ones to show that you've got the vocabulary. So cohesive devices will score in creating cohesion, making your set of sentences into a text, and it will help your vocabulary marks as well, how much lexical resource you have. But with band 7, you can have some under or overuse, no problem. And this is fairly key. You have one idea, one paragraph. So present a clear central topic within each paragraph. So keep one idea in one paragraph. Soon as you move on to something else, it's a new paragraph. Some of you like to deal with positive and negative in the same way. That can sometimes work if you've got one main thing you deal with. So let's say we're looking at global warming. So global warming is a costly thing for governments. Governments have to have legislation. Da, 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 da. However, this cost is easily justified by the savings on electricity generation from fossil fuels, something like that. So you can have a positive and a negative together around the central idea of something in the topic, so global warming. Personally, I think it's better to have all the negatives in one paragraph, all the positives in another. It's difficult to put them together with coherence. So maybe you should stick with one idea, one paragraph, and keep them all positive or all negative in an argumentative essay. So clear, central topic, one idea, one paragraph. Okay, next thing that the examiner's looking for, lexical resource. Well, that's the examiner's way of saying, how many words do you know? Lexis, words, lexical, the adjective from it. So how many words have you got in your word bank? Well, we can prove it by using a sufficient range of vocabulary to allow some flexibility and precision. So instead of saying and, we can say additionally, furthermore, another point to bear in mind, or this sort of thing. So using words and phrases like this will help not only with the coherence and cohesion, but also prove that you've got the word bank, necessary words to be able to describe your topics with some flexibility, not just repeating the same thing. Also, bear in mind that this is an academic essay, and if you're writing something like buy, she went to the shop to buy more food. Buy, well, it's an understandable word. I know what it means. But in academic writing, you'd be far better saying to purchase. So you try not to stick with the less formal language. Try and put some formality to it. Don't make it read like a lawyer's letter or a Victorian novel. Just because it's formal doesn't mean to be old-fashioned and overly stuffy. Modern academic writing doesn't need to be, it doesn't need to read like a Victorian novel. Many of you, I'm certain, have read some English literature and you think that's going to make it sound more academic. It's make it sound more literary, and you will sound more poetic perhaps, but not more academic. Academic writing is fairly simple. It just uses the proper words. So they tend to be Latin based. Things like buy come from the Anglo-Saxon section of English, but the longer words, they tend to be longer anyway, they're Latin based, and that's the sort of thing we need in academic writing. You know many of them. When I ask students, oh, is there another word you could use here? And there's, oh, purchase? I said, yeah, use it. So use these more academic, higher level vocabulary words when you know them. So uses less common lexical items with some awareness of style and collocation. That just means that your writing's getting quite sophisticated, not old-fashioned, but you're writing with a bit of style. It's not, and then they went to. Following that, the whole group returned to. So a bit of style, a bit of content awareness. How can you make it not particularly interesting, but how can you make it varied? How can you make it in an academic style? And the only way to find out how you're doing is to read example essays. Those of you who have the IELTS Advantage Writing Skills book, most of you should be working from that one. Those of you who've got that book, if you notice in the back of the book, there are some example essays. When working through the exercises in each unit, they refer you to those. Read them because they're in great English and they show you how it should look. You'll get an idea of what's required. Many of you I know are writing to formulas which you've learned from some of the review schools that you've perhaps attended. Many of them work. Many of the format template essays work, but lots of you try to force something you've learned, force it towards a title. It probably doesn't work. Sometimes it does, but I'd say the vast majority of times the essay doesn't quite fit. It seems learned. So try and write your own original ideas with a bit of style. And this word collocation, I wonder, let's do if we could do a little test here. What do you understand by collocation? So perhaps you could write something in the chat box. What is collocation? Just a quick definition. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to write something in the chat box, then we'll have a look. Doesn't have to be beautifully written, just the main ideas. Collocation. Okay, I'm going to have a look in the chat box now. I hope there's something written there. Here we are. Use of certain words together. Well done, Emerald. Yep. Arrangement. Get in there. Yes. Yes, that's basically what we're looking at. Let me put my definition. Stop sharing that one. I'm going to put my definition in here. The PowerPoint's reacting to it. So 2 or more words that appear together with more than random frequency. Okay. So 2 or more words that appear together with more than random frequency. Oh, that's gone to just to Kate. Let me copy that and put it to everyone. That would be better. Then you can all see it. There you are. So in the chat box, 2 or more words that appear together with more than random frequency. So somebody else has put greater range. Maria has put a greater range of words. Yeah, it's more than that. It's, if you can imagine reading a newspaper and you get to the end of one line and you see a word and you almost know what the next word will be. It's to stop surprises happening when you're reading. So, for example, Let's think. Let's take a fixed expression which we could use as an example. Come in, sit down. Would you like tea or... And you know that the next word is likely to be coffee. Would you like tea or orange juice? That's strange. So quite often I read strange words in some of your writing. So collocation is getting a feel for not just single words, but the words which go together. We need to learn them almost. So by reading more academic essays written by others, we can get to learn the fixed expressions, the phrases which are likely, the words which go together. And by using some of those, you'll increase your score. Oh, sorry, somebody said I can't see anything. My fault, I didn't press return. So I hope you can see it now. That's my definition for collocation. Two or more words that appear together with more than random frequency. So you can predict them, and that's the sort of thing we need to work towards. Okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint, which I think has gone to a different slide. There we are. Task achievement, coherence, lexical resource. Okay, so using less common lexical items, some awareness of style and collocation. So don't surprise the reader with words that he's never seen before. Try and get some idea of chunks of words. A fixed expression is a collocation. I'm sure that when you read letters from official places like banks, letters in English, you'll get things like, at the bottom of the letter, if I can be of any further assistance, please do not hesitate to contact me. Now, the writer didn't think that phrase up this morning. That's a fixed phrase. It's collocational. They go together. If I can be of any further, you know the next word is assistance. It might be help, but it's likely to be further assistance. Please do not, you know the next word is hesitate. It's not going to be do not write to me. It's going to be do not hesitate to write to me. So that's what we mean by collocation. If you can put some examples of that to show your awareness of collocation, another step towards band 7. And as I've said before, band 7 is not perfect. You can make occasional errors in word choice. If you're using higher level vocabulary, well, you're likely to make mistakes. They're less frequent. So you might spell it incorrectly, or you might use an adjective instead of a noun, or a verb form instead of a noun. The word formation here. So you might have ing instead of ed, perhaps. But that's okay if it's a higher level word. The lower level words, well, you should have learned those years ago. If they're wrong, bigger penalty. But if you're trying for higher level vocabulary and you make a mistake, it's not so heavily penalized. Okay. Now, next one, grammatical range and accuracy. This is the last criteria for 7. We ask that you use a variety of complex structures. It's no good using the same, and then we went to, and then we went to another place, and then we went back to where we started, and then we went home. And then we went, I've got that, you can use that. I need to see that you can use a variety. Following that, we made our way to. Same thing, you're explaining the same idea. You should be able to produce frequent error-free sentences. When I'm going through essays with students, sometimes there are 2 or 3 sentences in a row with no errors. I'll highlight them green for go. Those are the sort of sentences we need. But it's band 7. You can make mistakes. It doesn't have to be completely error-free, just frequently error-free. So 2 or 3 sentences in a row with no errors would be good. You should show that you have good control of grammar. You know how it works. You're not experimenting on the day of the exam. You know how grammar works. You can form complex sentences. It's not asking you to make it complicated, but to use complex grammar in order to describe the simple things that you're describing in your essay. A good control of punctuation. You should know when to use commas, for example. In the grammatical name for them is non-defining relative clauses, but it means extra information. So that was the man who lives next door to me, who I told you about last week. The who lives next door to me could come out of the sentence and we get, that's the man I told you about last week. That makes sense. So the extra information, who lives next door to me, that needs a comma before and after it. It's a non-defining relative clause. I'll put a post about it up on Facebook later today to explain that in more detail. But that sort of thing is what we need to see, that you're aware of punctuation and that you can use it. You may make a few errors. Permission to make a mistake. It's only band 7. There are 2 more to go. You can make some errors and you're still going to be at 7. It doesn't have to be perfect. Okay. So, good foundations. Without the planning, the essay's not going to be the best you can do. So it's the bedrock, the foundation, the underpinning, strong base of a good essay. 4 to 5 minutes to plan. From your brainstorming, you should be able to get some good points that you can explain and give examples for. So this is the support they talk about in the criteria. So give me a statement, then explain why and how, and then perhaps give me an example, better still, a local example or something which has happened to you or a close friend or one of your family. Remember, it's not a test of what you know, but how well you write English. So what are the problems of something, let's say traffic. Traffic congestion in cities is a problem in many places. How has this come about and what can we do to solve the problem? Well, we don't want you to write the perfect answer of exactly how you would go about solving it. Just a few suggestions. So you don't have to give the answer. There might not be one. We're just asking for a few of your ideas, but I really don't care what they are. If you decide that, well, on Tuesdays only red cars can go into the city, I'm fine with that. It's a suggestion. If I was the governor of the city, I would say it's impractical, but if you can explain in good English, that's what you think, it's not wrong. So if you said only helicopters will be allowed, this is getting a bit fantasy. But if you said only red cars should be allowed into the city on alternate days and blue cars on the other days, well, that's one solution. If you use brilliant English to tell me about that, you'll get better marks than telling me 16 different methods with no support. So less is more, once again. So that's what I'm saying at the bottom. Fewer points, well supported, is much better than many ideas not explained. Sometimes I'll read your essays and they might be 300 or 400 words. 400 is too long. 300 and something is great. I'll read them, but they're not essays. They're like bullet points for a much bigger essay. You give me so much information and no support that it's no longer an essay. It's like a plan for the next big piece of writing. Some of them have got so many detailed points you couldn't possibly write about them in 300 words. It's like the plan for a 5,000 word essay. That's not what I want. I'm not testing what you know, but how well you write English. The answer, unimportant. How you support that answer is key. So, brainstorming, sometimes called a mind shower. Some of you obviously have difficulty with this, and sometimes, so do I. Sometimes I just can't get a handle on the idea, and I think, what can I write about this? Well, my head's so full of things that I don't know where to start. Other times I think, yeah, right, I'll talk about this, and then I could talk about why that happened. Oh, and I could give the example of this, and I'm fine. Sometimes the ideas come. If you get one of those days where you go, I know nothing about this. Where would I start? Remember, calm down. It's not a test of what you know, but how you talk about it. So you could even put a phrase in, although I do not have much personal experience about this, it would probably be. So you're even using English to explain why you can't answer it. That's fine. Not can't answer, you obviously have to write something, but if you say, I'm not entirely sure that this is correct, however, it seems logical that. And then if it's not right, you've used English to explain your idea. It's not a test of your knowledge, but IELTS helps you in that they don't ask you to explain ethanol-fueled motors in Brazilian vehicles. You probably don't know much about that, but it would be broad ideas, main areas, which keep coming. As an examiner, I would see a repeat type of question with just a few topics, really. They're not hugely different from month to month. They're things, remember the I in IELTS is international, so they're things which affect everybody. You might get, luckily for most of you, healthcare. You might get a question on healthcare and environment. You might get a question about transport, education. If you're doing an IELTS test, you've had some education. So there are topics which really you should be able to write something about. They're not going to ask you about design of rockets during the 50s. It's just not going to come up. It'll be broader areas which you should be able to talk about. There won't be anything about religion. There won't be anything about politics. You can bring it into your essay, but they won't be the main questions. So once we've got an idea of some of the general sorts of topics, and there are not many, if you look through the book, you can see there's broad areas. I'm sure none of you have been stuck for ideas for the topics in the book. There's something that people have seen. If you've lived for more than 20 years, you've seen the things they ask you to talk about. So getting it into a logical order is where you will be helped with the brainstorming and the planning. So a little bit more about this. Sometimes it's hard to generate ideas. So if I've been stuck for something, I've used a method I learnt many years ago at the British Council. It's called the Fields of Enquiry method. Got it at the top in the blue. Fields of Enquiry. So fields means area, enquiry, questions. So try this. Write down 4 or 5 fields, areas. So it doesn't matter what they are, anything at all. This is the sort of thing I might go for. Government, family, international, money. And think about a topic. Think about the topic you've been asked to write about. Put 4, 5, maybe just 3 would be enough. And how does the topic relate to these things? So just write some keywords connecting the topic with the fields. Some of them, I'm sure, you have nothing or just a very weak connection. don't write about that. Some of them, you'll start to spark ideas, and you'll begin to think, oh yeah, and it would be affected by the, sometimes this would happen, and just write a few keywords. Then sit back, look at what you've got, select the strongest ideas. This might not be the most important, this might not be the key ideas for the topic. Remember, we're not testing your knowledge. It might be the ones you can support well. So don't get hung up with having to answer the question. The question's just there to use as a vehicle to show how well you can write English. So you might take the smallest point for the topic, but fully explain it and give it a perfect example or two examples. And that's going to be far better than trying to list everything with no support. So less is more, once again. Okay. So how does this work? Well, here I'm going to do something I haven't done so far in webinars. I'm going to let you give me some work to do and see if this would be helpful to you. So first of all, we need an essay question. So I'd like you to write an argumentative essay title in the chat box now. So I'll give you a couple of minutes. You can copy one from a book if you like, or one you've done yourself recently. So I'll shut up for a couple of minutes, then I'll look in the chat box and see what you've given me. Be kind. Okay, that's about 2 minutes. Let's see what we've got in the chat box. Joe has given one. Money is better off spent on promoting a healthy lifestyle rather than treating people with diseases. Do you agree or disagree? Now that's an opinion essay. That's not an argumentative. That's asking me to... I asked for an argumentative essay, which would be 90% of essays in IELTS. Many museums charge for admission while others are free. Do you think the advantages of charging them outweigh the disadvantages? There's an argumentative one. Thank you, Maria. Is social life better than academics? Not sure what that one means. I think I'll go with this one, Maria. Thank you. That's definitely an argumentative one. So I'm going to copy that. Now I'll stop sharing the PowerPoint and I'll open up a Word document. There we are. Share the same one. There we are. Let's try it again. That's a PowerPoint. Okay, so webinar Friday the 5th of August, generating ideas and supporting them. And you've given me the title, thanks Maria, of this Many museums charge for admission while others are free. Do you think the advantages of charging people for admission to museums, I'll just edit that, outweigh the disadvantages? Okay, so it is argumentative. And I'm going to go fields of inquiry. So we'll have government. I'll go for family. Education. And money. So I guess the money one will be quite useful because we've got money in the title. So let me see. Government. Well, all right, support. Tourism revenue. Whoop, can't spell this morning. Okay, family. Day out. And entertainment. Okay, education. Schools. Learning. Homework. Research. Okay. Whoops. Money. So the cost of maintenance. Spell this money. The cost of maintenance. Purchase of new items. Okay, we've got a little bit of something to work on there. That's taken me about 3 minutes. I'm beginning to think, okay, some areas here. I don't think the family is going to be a productive area, so I'm not going to do anything with that. I'm going to take that out. But I think I will go with the government. I might talk about governments giving museums some money and why advantages of charging outweigh the disadvantages. I'm going to look at it quite a lot from the education point of view and then justify why they might want to charge, but balance it off against the government offsetting some of the cost, I think. So how I would begin, this is not a template. I'm not suggesting that you always do this, but here's one way to begin an essay, an argumentative essay. So, many stories. Editing, charging. Okay. Okay, so here's a little Introduction. So there have been many stories in the media recently about museums charging for admission, in particular whether this is an advantage to the institution or not. Notice I didn't say museums twice. I had museums here, but I've now called it an institution. So I'm going to get vocabulary points for knowing that museums are institutions. Right. This essay will discuss both sides of the topic and state my own opinion. So many of you forget to tell me what you're going to do. The introduction is to say, okay, I've got this topic, here it is paraphrased, I'm going to discuss both sides and give you my opinion. The introduction shouldn't have any ideas in it yet. It should just tell me what the writing is about and what you're going to do with it, which angle you'll approach it from. So an introduction like this, you can use with all argumentative essays. If you take this as your overall big topic, so I'll just put a little note at the top here. So the green one, so overall general topic. So if that were green, that's what that is. Now, in particular, whether there is an advantage to the institution or not. So this is the main part of your question. So this is the focus. Okay, so if you put the overall general topic in the green part and the focus, the particular part in detail that you're looking at in the light blue part, that sort of template, it doesn't have to be exactly like that, that sort of template would serve you well as a basic introduction. You can add more, you don't have to use it, but that sort of thing, it seems logical. And it cannot be denied. There have been many stories in the media recently. Prove or disprove that. It's got to be true. In particular, whether this is or whether there are, you have to change that grammatically to fit your focus. And this essay will discuss both sides of the topic and state my own opinion. Well, you're just telling me exactly what you're going to do. So, I'm going to go back to the question just to refocus my mind, make sure that I am answering the question. So, many museums charge for admission while others are free. Do you think the advantages of charging people for admission to museums outweigh the disadvantages? Okay. So I thought that I would go from the education point of view. That's going to be my main thing. So firstly, museums are an important resource for education, and as such, should be provided for the benefit of students. Right. Many of you at this point give me another idea. This is nowhere near finished yet. I've made a statement here and I need to say why, and then I need to give an example. This is what it means by support. So firstly, and I'm going to edit it immediately. I haven't got a comma there. Firstly, museums are an important resource for education and as such should be provided, I want to clarify this, free of charge for the benefit of students. Okay. And I'm going to say why I think this. So this would include even the poorest sections of the community in the learning process. for example. Or you could increase the variety by saying as an illustration, if only the people who could afford entrance fees, if only the people who could afford entrance fees had access to the exhibits in such places. I've used if, so I need to now use would in the other side of it. If only the people who could afford entrance fees had access to the exhibits in such places, there would be little chance of the poorest sections of society being able to perform well in okay, so this may not be the main idea, this may not be what you were thinking of, but that's what I wanted to go for from my education idea here. I haven't yet mentioned homework research, but I've talked about schools, so I've talked about it from a money point of view, and I've included the education side of it. So what I've done is provided an idea there. Then I've said why I think that idea is of importance. And then as an illustration, it's not a particularly good illustration, but this is live. I've said what would happen if we don't allow all people to go to museums. So all of these words offer 1 point. Some of you have had 3 points in this sort of, so 74 words in this paragraph. Let's go for the whole thing with the introduction and the first paragraph. We're already 114, which is fine because 250 is the minimum. So if we doubled that, we've got our 250. You don't need more than 2 items. If you've got a particularly strong one, which you can write multiple examples for, you might be able to get away with just 1 idea. So this is not too little. And the fact that I've given a statement, said why, and provided some sort of illustration or further example, that's enough. That's what we look for. At the editing point of things, I'd be checking to see that I've got my verb and noun agreement. I've said museums with an S. So it cannot be is. Museums is. It's got to be are. So I know you know, but sometimes you forget. So museums are. Make sure that all your nouns match your verbs. We've got important resource, and there's no S on there, so we can use a singular article. Yeah, an important resource. Or you could say, firstly, museums provide important resources. So several ways to say it, but make sure the verb-noun agreement matches. So thanks for that title, Maria. That was quite kind. Now, we have a few minutes left, so I'd like to ask any questions. So we didn't get quite as far as I wanted with editing. We might look at editing along with another skill another day. So I'll carry that forwards to another webinar. I hope it's been of use today. So do you have any questions for today? So let's have a look in the chat box, see if I've got anything. Here's one. Now, is it okay to state the introduction like this? This essay will argue that the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. Both points will be discussed, followed by a reasoned conclusion. That would be perfect. Yeah. It's more than okay. That's fine. That's really good. So this essay will argue. You're telling me what you're going to do, that the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. So you've taken one side, and you're going to that the advantages outweigh. Yeah, you've taken one side, so you're going to major on the advantages. You will, because you've said both points will be discussed. You'll have to say why other people might disagree with you. So you've given your opinion early on, and you've told us that you're going to back it up with reasoned answers. A reasoned conclusion, perhaps I'd wonder about. The conclusion should just tell us in short form what you've told us about. So introduction, what are you going to talk about? Body of the essay, for and against. Conclusion, this is what I've told you about. So don't bring anything new in the conclusion. The conclusion should just restate what you've had. So a reasoned conclusion, so long as the conclusion just restated, because you've given your reasons in the body. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's see if there's anything else. Sometimes there's something in Q&A. No. Chat. So no more questions? Oh, it was a nice title from Corey. Is it inevitable that as technology advances, traditional cultures will be lost? It seems that we cannot have these two things together. To what extent do you agree or disagree? That's more like an opinion title. You could show both sides, but yeah, that's a nice one. I might borrow that. Thank you, Corey. Okay. Well, that's the top of the hour. So if nobody has any more questions, I'll just say thank you very much for viewing this. And if any of you have areas or concerns that you'd like me to do a webinar for, please let me know via the Facebook page or an email to myself or Kate, and I'll try and cover anything which would be of benefit to the majority. So thank you very much for looking, and I hope to see you again either in a one-to-one class or a webinar again in the future. So thanks for tuning in, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.